campers, what's up? It's Yana. Welcome to day 22 of Camp NaNoWriMo July 2020. I literally just got home. I've had a surprisingly busy day and I was gonna chat to you guys about something, but now I'm kind of late for my writing group, so I'm gonna have to go there first and then hopefully afterwards we can talk about my topic today. But for now, let's go to Shut Up and Write! Okay, our writing hour has just started, so what I wanted to chat about very quickly with you guys is making our characters suffer. Because let's be honest, most stories that are interesting and we want to read, not all but most, are based on somebody's suffering. So then the question is, how do we make our characters suffer? How much? And in what ways do we convey that suffering so that the reader actually cares? Now, that depends somewhat on genre. If you're writing a very realistic drama, then the suffering will be true to real life, so it will be quite easy for a reader to relate what's happening because it might be similar to a situation that either they've experienced or somebody they know has experienced, or at least something that they have seen around them in some way. I, however, usually write fantasy. And the problem with fantasy violence and fantasy suffering, there's a reason that even in movies, if you've ever looked carefully at the ratings, if you have fantasy violence, then your movie isn't going to be as highly rated if you have realistic violence. Because I think there's an inherent suspension of disbelief in fantasy that kind of prevents us from experiencing things as strongly as we would if we were looking at something realistic. As readers or as consumers of whatever media that is, we kind of already had it in our heads that this isn't real. So very often, even if you kill a character in fantasy, your readers might be like, well, it's a fantasy, we don't really know, do we? I mean, there's your Gandalfs and your Harry Potters and other various Jesuses, literary Jesuses that have come back from the dead. Or if you chop somebody's arm off, that still doesn't have the same kind of impact and fantasy as it would if this were a book about a soldier who lost their arm in battle, or even a cancer patient who had to have it amputated. So then what do we do in a less realistic setting to make sure that our reader really does relate to the character and to make them really experience and be moved by the character's suffering? Well, one of the things that I like to do is to use very small ways to make the character suffer rather than the big ones. So of course there's all drama and battles and whatever else I want to include in that story. But I also find that sometimes the most impactful moments are very, very simple and kind of everyday issues. For example, if a character gets injured in battle, even as I'm writing it, I don't sympathize as much as I would if that character, for example, really was craving ice cream and they couldn't get ice cream. Because that is such a small, silly thing, but because we can all relate to it, it's kind of this immediate connection. And then I feel so bad for the character when it's something like that. And especially with things like wanting specific foods that you can't get, or being deprived of sleep, just wanting to sleep, because we've all had moments in our lives when you're so tired and you're just dreaming of your bed. I find that kind of sprinkling those little things in between the much bigger and grandiose and epic action really helps to humanize those characters and to help the reader feel bad for them, because you want your reader to feel bad for them in order to also feel really good later on when that character gets their happy ending. If they do, maybe what you're writing is a very tragic story. But a lot of my characters, not all of them, but a lot of them get a happy ending at the end, and I want that to really have an impact. And in order for that to have an impact, I want the readers to have felt really bad for them throughout. So this is one of my ways to do that. So what are yours? What kind of tricks do you use to make your readers sympathize? And do you like torturing your characters? How much do you do that? Do you go like full out, everything's just raining on that one person's head? Or do you prefer to kind of, be a little bit nicer to them? Those are my questions for today, and now I'm gonna get to writing and we'll see how I do, because what I'm writing is exactly one of those little scenes where I want to make a character very relatable and I want you to feel terrible for them, even though what's happening to them is not necessarily life or death. So I'm gonna get to that now. Here's another thing that I'm noticing right now as I'm writing. When it's a scene that includes some kind of internal emotional turmoil, I usually try to steer clear of describing it too much, and I try to kind of use actions to relate that to the reader, because I think internal monologues and the character just moping, that's just dangerous territory. I mean, there are ways to write it well, and it's not like I never write it, but it's very easy for it to become melodramatic, even if there's a very valid reason for that character to be very unhappy at that moment. I think as soon as you start just writing their thoughts, and the thoughts are just, I'm so miserable, woe is me, everything is horrible, I think it's very easy for that to kind of start edging towards bad writing. Whereas if you use actions, if you really think about what people do when they're upset, then your reader kind of deciphers the situation in the same way that they would in real life if they saw somebody doing something and that gave them the clue that that person is feeling a certain way in the moment. Or another option is using another character to talk about how upset somebody is. I'm babbling, I should be writing. Okay, I think I'm done for the day. There's still a few minutes left of our writing hour, but I don't really think I need to write anymore. I'm still slightly ahead with my Camp NaNoWriMo goal. I'm hoping to finish a few days early so that whatever days I have left, I can just wrap up my 5 songs for the musical. I've been working on those a little bit, but I only have 2 finished ones, so I do still have to do 3 songs. But it just occurred to me that based on what I was saying, you were probably left with a really weird impression of what I was writing about, and I just want to clarify, I was not just writing one scene in which one single character really wanted ice cream and was also really emotionally distressed and monologuing to themselves and just super upset, and like just everything was happening to that one character. It was actually 2 separate scenes with 2 completely different characters, and they don't happen at the same point in the story, because I am still puzzle writing. I'm still writing episodes that are just happen at various points in the timeline. I am kind of running out of ideas for such scenes though, so I use some of my writing time usually to just go back, and I said, if you saw my previous video about rebooting my novel, I'm also working in that separate document. So now I'm also going back to the first chapters and going through them with kind of like a finer comb, and when I hit a hole where there isn't a scene, I now try to fill that up as well. But the two scenes that I was writing just now, one of them was a bit earlier on, but it's not yet in the kind of edited version of the novel. It's new writing, and then the other one was a lot further on. So yeah, I wasn't just throwing everything that I could come up with in the same scene. Anyway, I think that's all from me for today. It wasn't really much of a video, but then again, I was so busy. I was seeing my friend. I got an extra surprise lesson where a parent just called me and was like, "Can we have a lesson in 5 minutes?" And I was like, "What?" But anyway, we had the lesson in 5 minutes because I could do it. I am absolutely babbling at the moment. I already asked you my questions earlier, but just repeat them. Let me know how you torture your characters. What horrible things do you love doing to them? And anything related to that sort of topic. I'm just feeling evil. But thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow with another video. Bye!